Welcome to our big old flip home. Today we are going to show you how to build a wonderful bench seat in front of your windows. So come along and we'll show you step by step exactly how to make one of these for yourself. So here's the first step in my unorthodox window seat bench. This is the first thing I did. I'll break it down real quick. So the first thing I did is I made sure I had wood on the wall. So this piece was already in the wall, halfway down. There wasn't one on this side, so as you can see I put a new piece of lumber. But that can be a 2x4 or 2x6, and that's screwed directly to the wall. And this is the sill of the window. I left a little gap so the plywood's going to slide under there. So I screwed those to the wall. Then what I did is I put, this is 12 feet long. So every like 3 or 4 feet, I put 5 of these guys. This one that goes to the floor. So I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just kind of spread them out evenly. And so those I screwed to the piece that's screwed to the wall. So I screwed them there, and then right now they're just sitting on the floor. But I'll show you later what we're going to do with that. So once I got those 5 down, then I screwed 2 2x4s all the way down. And what I did is I left enough space. I'm going to put, we got to leave room for it. We're going to lay a 2x6 later. So I'll show you. This is a typical 2x4. I made it so it sits flush. So once I got these into the wall, then I held one of these up to make sure it's going to sit flush, and then screwed this in underneath. So that's the first step you do. So that's just to create a wall base. Okay, next thing I did is I cut out these little cross boards, and you just measure those to size, how far you want it. What I did is on our old house here, as you can see, there's a baseboard that ended right here. So I'm going to end, this is the toe kicker board. It's going to be on the front of the cabinet. And we're going to have a sheet of plywood here. So I'm leaving just enough room, about 3/4 of an inch, so the sheet of plywood can slide all the way down. So you get your toe kicker where you want it, and then measure these cross boards. And then I'm going to screw 2 screws through the kicker board into here, and then 2 screws, one there, to go into these support beams here. So that's the next thing we're going to do. I'm going to put 1 on each one. I'm going to put 2 on the middle one, just for a little extra support in the middle, where it'll probably be taking the most weight. So let's get on it. And here's a little bonus tip. Make sure you got yourself one of these little metal right angle tools. Not sure what this is called. But these are so useful in cutting boards and stuff. But right now, what I'm going to do is use it. I'm going to put it right there. And you can use it, put it up against each board, and make sure you got a nice 90-degree angle. This should sit flush up against each board. That'll tell you that this is a 90-degree angle to that. So, a little bonus tip. Okay, now we're done with our base. So you can see it's a nice looking, good, solid base that we can use to build from to build the rest of our bench. And as you can see, they got 2 screws going into each 2x4 that way. And then we got the 2 screws going from 2x4 to 2x4 there. So this creates a very solid structure right here. Okay, so the next thing I did is I'm getting ready to cut the support beams that are going to go on these corners. So I've got these little scraps of lumber that I have from a different project. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to set them up here. I want these to be flush with this. So I just kind of set them up here. And then I took my Sharpie and then just went whoosh, and drew a line on them so I know the exact height to make them flush. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these, and make sure you number them. I've got 1, 2, 3 down through 6. The reason you want to number them is because your floor might not be level, so you can't assume that these are all going to be exactly the same. So by numbering them and drawing the line, because like we're working in an old house, and I guarantee you this floor is not level. So anyway, that's the way to keep them organized. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those. Okay, now I got all my pieces cut to size, and I recommend pre-drilling the holes and go ahead and insert your screws so that the next process goes real quick. So I got those all ready to go, and then I put my first one in. So if the screws and the holes are already in, you just set it up and then just zip, 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 screw them into this board. So that's the next step. Go ahead and do the rest of these here. All right, as you can see, we got all these screwed in nice and tight. Next thing we're going to do is put a 2x4 on the outside right here, running horizontally down the line. So let's go ahead and attach those 2x4s. Okay, so this next 2x4 that you see here, that's going to go up flush with the top. But for now, I'm going to set it there so I can go in and quickly pre-drill my holes, put the screws in, so then when I lift it and have to drill it, it'll go in really quick. The reason for that is I usually need a hand when I'm doing this, and my wife is doing her own projects, and she doesn't like to be interrupted. And if she is interrupted, she doesn't want it to be for very long. So if I get everything ready to roll, then I can pop it up and have her hold one in, and then I can just get them in real quick. All right, so I'll go ahead and do that pre-drilling and get those screws set. All right, so I've got my lovely assistant here, and she's going to hold up the other end of this board while I screw in this end. So what we want to do is just make this flush with the top of the 2x4. Okay, oops, right there. And since I got all the screws ready to go, they'll go right in real easy. Here's, can you lift it up to 10? Oh, actually, here, I'll just... I got it now.
Okay.
Wait, I need to help with the other one. So I got the two ends in. Now we'll work on the other side. So same thing. And if you notice, I made sure these 2x4s, if I was planning ahead, I would have just had a 12-foot long 2x4. But since I'm working with scraps, make sure they meet in the middle of one of these. So you got good something to fasten to. So we're going to make sure that's flush there. And then screw her in. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Lovely assistant.
Yeah.
All right, now you can see, so that's in. And I noticed that one of mine, this one sticks out a little bit. And I need that flush because we're going to be setting boards across the top here. So I'm going to go ahead and get my little cutoff tool and cut the top of that off. Make it level. Okay, so that is a nice solid structure now. And now we just need the cross beams. They're going to support, they're going to connect these two guys and then support the boards that I'm going to lay horizontally across there. So next thing you want to do, we're going to measure these. So it's going to go from there to the inside of this board. So you're just going to get your measurement. Whoops. And it looks like we're at 15 and a half. 15 and a half will get us from there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut probably 6 of these. So all the way across. All right, let's get on it. Okay, so what you want to do here is I pre-drilled my screws. You see they're at a nice angle. Then make that nice and flush with that. And then go ahead and screw them in. And that got it twisted a little bit. So take a moment to correct it. And I want to check it over here, make sure that's nice and lined up flush. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and put in my other screw here. Okay. All right, and then the next thing you're gonna do is come on the outside here and just put 2 screws straight in from there into your crossbeam. That's an easy one. Okay, so we got that all screwed together. So I think it looks pretty fantastic. And the important thing is it's solid as a rock. I could get up and climb on this thing. So it's already solid, but we're just going to make it even better in the next step. Okay, so now you can see I've got my 3, these are 2x6s laid across the top. And because I'm working with scraps, these are little pieces left over from other stuff, and some of them are stuff I got cheap. They're quite bowed. So, and what I mean by that is, so this is flush at the end, but then as you can see, it bows out in the middle, and then it touches again at the other end. So what I'm going to do to fix that, I'm going to do a rip cut, which for those of you that weren't homeschooled, means a cut down the length of the board. And let me show you how I'm going to do it. So I'm just going to take my Sharpie, and it starts the separation about here. So I'm just going to go down the length of the board, and then I'm going to cut along this line, and that should give me a pretty flush front. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this line and then cut it. Okay, so I flipped the board over, and just so you can see how bent the board was, you can see where I drew my line. The line is essentially straight, or pretty close to straight. And you see that? So see how much separation I'm going to have to cut off? And rip cuts are the worst. You got to have a super strong saw. Hopefully you're not trying this with a battery operated saw, because if you got to do a rip cut with a battery operated saw, you'll probably go through 2 or 3 batteries. All right, let's get on it. Okay, so now you can see I got this cut, and it's nice and flush with the edge, looking pretty good. And you can see these boards, you can see how warped they are, but they are flat this way, they're just warped that direction. So there's going to be gaps, but that don't matter, because we're going to put plywood on this next. But first I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put a few screws in these. So basically where we put those cross beams in, we're just going to drop a couple screws here and there. So wherever there's a beam, I'm going to put a screw or 2 all the way down just to get these flat, and then we'll put our plywood on. All right, let's get to it. So I found this scrap of plywood, a couple of these in the basement. So what I'm going to do is use this. It's really thin stuff. I've got thick stuff for the top, but I didn't buy enough to cover the front. So I'm going to use the same technique I did before. I'm just going to sit this here and then draw a line with my Sharpie on the back so I can cut it just flush with the bench. And that should work out pretty good. Okay, now I'm ready to attach my little sheet of, my first sheet of plywood. So just to kind of take note so I'm basically just going to be screwing into this top board and the bottom board. So just kind of take note where the screws are. Just kind of wherever I put a stud, there's probably some screws. And so I'm just going to push that up tight and screw that in. And for this, I'm just going to use these little drywall screws, just these little bitty guys, because this isn't heavy at all, and these should work fine to hold it in. All right, let's knock it out. Okay, so you can see it now with all the plywood on it. And what I did on these sheets, the place I bought it was kind and cut these down to they cut a sheet of plywood in half. So it still hung off a few inches. So I did the same technique where I laid it over, it was sticking out, and then I went under with my pen, with my Sharpie, and drew a line and then cut it. Came out pretty nice and flush all the way down. Okay, now I'm going to pick up this plywood, look under the hood, kind of just get a gauge. Well, I pretty much have 2x6s everywhere. There's just a little gap. So I can pretty much screw wherever I like. So I'm just going to put that down, and then I'm just going to go down every couple feet and put in some screws on the front, maybe a couple in the middle and a couple in the back, all the way down, just to get it nice and secure. And you want to make sure to sink these screws in a bit, because like I did here, I sunk these in past the plywood, because I want to come back with some wood filler later and fill that up, and then we're going to stain these at the end. So, all right, let's get on it.
Okay, so now you can see what it looks like. All the screw heads have been wood filled, so you can't see where any of the screws went in. It's nice and smooth. And we applied the stain. We used a really dark stain, which is almost like a paint. And I think it came out really nice. And the next step, we're going to put on the trim, which is going to really give it that $1 million look. So let's go on and get on the trim.
Okay, you can see the next thing we did was we put our runner boards, the kicker at the bottom, and then just the little decorative one at the top, all the way down. I think they came out pretty nice. Now we're going to put some vertical ones in here as well to kind of give it a little fun accent. And you don't have to do this. This is just a little decorative thing, but I do recommend at least putting a kicker at the bottom, because since the face of this is plywood, if someone's going to sit down and they kick it, they can easily break plywood, but this stuff is not going to break. So there you have it. You now have a nice, beautiful window bench seat. The paint is all done. We filled in all the holes and given it a couple extra coats of paint where we put the wood filler over the screw heads. And I think it came out really lovely. And I hope you like it. I hope that yours comes out successful too. God bless.